All right, by now you are probably the owner of a brand new website domain name and are ready to get going with your new website. The next step in building a website, or really before you can start, is you need to hook up with a web host provider. And if you've never built a website before, you might be wondering, well, what is a web host provider and why do I need one? Well, the basic idea is that as you create your website, you are going to be uploading photographs, articles, images, graphics, video to some place up in the internet where people can access it when they go online. And so what you need to do is take all of your articles, your videos, your graphics, your photographs, and be able to place those with someone who is in the business of hosting websites. Now, some of you might be asking, well, why can't I just keep all of these things on my computer and have people access my computer? There are some guys that do host themselves, but really it does require not only a high level of expertise, but also specialized computer hardware and a whole lot of very expensive software. And so to set up yourself as a host would probably cost you several $1,000s. And so it's just a lot easier to go with someone who's in the business of doing that. It's just a whole lot more secure for your website. And also the internet access to your home or wherever you're keeping your computer may not be that reliable. And when your internet connection goes down, so would your website go down. And so for a whole lot of reasons, it's just necessary to partner with someone who is in the business of hosting websites. Now, if you've ever looked for websites before, you'll know that there are hundreds of organizations out there that are vying for your business, wanting you to host your website with them. And a lot of them have some very attractive offers. If you've ever done any web host shopping before, you'll know that some people out there that are offering the world to you for just like $1.99 a month. And they claim that they will give you unlimited storage, unlimited bandwidth, unlimited websites, just, unlimited everything for $1.99 a month. Well, it may sound all very well and wonderful, but just a word to the wise, unlimited usually, in most cases out there, does not mean unlimited. They will find other ways to restrict you that will prevent anybody of really taking advantage of unlimited everything. And you can usually find these restrictions if you look around and look for the terms of service agreement. If you scroll down to the bottom of most of these host providers, they will list their terms of service down here. And if you read the fine print, you will find that there are little hidden restrictions that really prevent people from taking too much advantage of this unlimited offers. So what are the things that we are looking for when we are shopping for a good host provider? Well, maybe, first of all, just a couple of tips to keep in mind. First of all, don't necessarily go by the recommendations of some of these host review sites that you might find by typing into Google web host providers or web host review sites. Something to keep in mind, most of these sites that you might find there are making a commission when you click through. So let's just click on one of these, for example, and they list a number of web host providers and they rank them, rate them. But as you click through to one of these and go to their websites, should you sign up with one of these sites, just keep in mind that the web host review site is actually going to make a commission by the fact that you clicked through. And so there may not necessarily be unbiased in their reviews as they rank these sites. Probably the next best tip is don't necessarily shop by price. Sometimes the old adage is true, you pay for what you get and you get what you pay for. Or the lower the offer, probably the lower the service. Don't really be impressed by the unlimited offers. In fact, if a website specifies right up front that you are limited to how much hard drive space they will give you and how much bandwidth that they're going to give you, and they're going to charge you, $12, $15 a month. Well, there's a good chance that that type of host provider is going to be a much better provider than those that are offering free services or, $2 a month type of thing. All right, so what are we really looking for? What do we really need when we are shopping for a good host provider? First of all, we're looking for a host provider that won't restrict your data flow. I have worked with web host providers that once they caught on to the fact that I was wanting to stream video, they turned down the tap so that the video wouldn't play in real time or not play at all. So what you're looking for is a website that will not adjust the flow of your bandwidth, your band speed. A second thing that you're really looking for is speed. You want your website to pop. I've tried out some of these $2 a month programs and put up a very simple brochure site or a blog site. And then when I go to test the speed on some of these sites, I find that they're really slow. Sometimes takes 5-8 seconds or so to load a simple website page. And you know very well as a web surfer yourself that when you're searching for articles and you type into Google and you get a list of sites that are providing that information and you click on one and nothing happens for 5 seconds, you're very likely to move on to another option. And so it's very important that your website pop. And if your web host provider is not able to give you the speed so that your website loads almost instantly, then you need to find another web host provider. You want a web host provider that keeps up with the latest equipment, the latest tech. Many host providers just use old equipment, and that is one of the reasons why they're much slower than others. You want a web host provider that is using SSD hard drives, or at least SSD-assisted servers to, again, make your website pop. You want a web host provider that limits the number of users per server. You may have wondered, how on earth can these people make any money when they only charge $250 a month? Well, the reality is that they can have up to 2,000 accounts on one server. And so you do the math, you get 2,000 accounts on one server. That's $5,000 a month per server, and they could have up to 1,000 servers in their facility, and you can see how they are indeed able to make even only charging $250 a month. The problem is that when you have 2,000 customers on one box, this can really cause problems with your speed. If any one of the other 2,000 customers on that server is getting a lot of heavy traffic, it's going to slow everyone else down. So you want to find a host provider that has reasonable limits on the numbers of users per server. And something that I have found very important is you want a host provider that has a good support system. And what we mean by that is if you are working with your website and you come up against a problem that you just can't figure out the solution to, or let's say your website has crashed and it's no longer working, you can't log into it, people can't visit your site, you need to be able to contact your host provider and get a quick answer, a quick solution to the problem. Well, some web host providers are very fast in their response and can quickly get you back up and running or solve your problem. Other host providers are notorious for taking 2 or 3 days to respond to your question or your problem. And so that is very important, especially if you are creating websites for your clients and their website goes down. There's no way that you want to wait 2 or 3 days to get the problem solved and have your client pulling their hair out because you can't get their website up and running. If you have ever done some shopping for a web host provider, you've probably come up against a wide array of offers and plans. But basically, there's really only 3 levels of web hosting service that you could group everything into. And the first one is a shared server. And on the surface, that may look great and everything because it sounds like everybody's out there sharing everything. It has a good buy-in. The cost of hosting your site on a shared server runs anywhere from between free and about $15 a month. The problem is that, as we mentioned earlier, a shared server program can have as many as 2,000 users on one server, and that can cause problem with speed. It can also cause problem with security issues. Let's say one of the 2,000 users on your server gets hacked by a very bad virus. Well, that virus, depending on the security system software that your web host provider has paid for and installed on each one of their servers, your website may actually become vulnerable to the same virus. And so that's something to keep in mind when you're shopping. One good reason why it's maybe not best to go with the free service or the really cheap shared server service. We've talked about speed and downtime issues. In most cases, the shared server programs are a lot slower and are more vulnerable to downtime issues. And also because host providers that do have 2,000 users on one server and times that by maybe 100 servers or 1,000 servers, well, you can imagine how many calls they get or how many emails for support they receive, and may very well be one of the reasons why many web host providers take 3 or 4 days to get back to you, because they get so many requests for support. And so a web host provider that is trying to serve so many clients may not be able to answer your questions that quick. The next level up in servers is usually called a virtual private server, or a VPS. And what this really means usually is that there's going to be a lot fewer customers or users on any given server. And usually the equipment is better. Usually the software installed on these virtual private servers are better. They isolate each account better, and it's just a much better service. The buy-in is anywhere between $30 to $60 a month. And generally speaking, what is usually the case is that the more that you pay, the fewer users that you will find sharing the same server. You will, in most cases, get a lot better speed using a VPS system. You are most likely going to be assigned dedicated RAM, and as you shop around for a VPS, this will be one of the things that they advertise in their plans, is how much dedicated RAM that you're going to get on your VPS setup for the amount of money that you're going to pay per month. You're going to have better isolation from other users, better security. Okay, and the third level of service is what they call dedicated servers. And basically, or at least in theory, what this means is that you are going to get a whole server all to yourself with all of the hard drive space, all of the RAM. The whole server is going to be used only by you. And as you shop around, you'll see prices that run anywhere from $150 to $500 a month. And what causes the wide range of costs there is usually the amount of equipment that comes on your box, on your server. And it'll relate to processor speed, the amount of RAM that's installed, the amount of hard drive space, and often whether or not the server is a managed server or an unmanaged server. And what that means, if you get a managed server, you're going to get all the support that you need. If it's unmanaged, you pretty much have to run that server yourself. And so you need to be a lot more computer savvy in order to be able to work with an unmanaged server. So generally there's one user. There's much better speed usually because of the fact that you're the only user on that server. You have better security. You don't have to worry about anybody else on your computer getting infected with a virus and somehow passing that on to you. All right, with all of these things in mind, who are our recommended hosts? Well, As I've maybe already mentioned, I really like InMotion Hosting. I've used them for many years, and I also use Wired Tree. So you're probably wondering, which one should I choose? What are the pros and cons? Well, InMotion Hosting has a much lower buy-in than Wired Tree. You can get on mind you, it's a shared server program, but InMotion Hosting is a very high quality shared server programs. And you can get in for as little as $13.29 a month. These rates change from time to time. They go up and down based on the promotions they're running and that type of thing. But generally speaking, you can get into a high quality shared server program for $13 to $15 a month. And for that, you will get good speed. You'll not have any bandwidth restrictions. They're not going to turn down the tap on you. And they also use quality hardware. They are using the new fast SSD hard drives even for their shared server programs. And so even though you're getting into one of the lowest levels of service that we talked about earlier, they are using such quality hardware, your websites will still pop. Everything's going to run a lot faster than many of the other shared server programs out there. Okay, but why then would we recommend Wired Tree? Well, one of the things that you'll find at Wired Tree is they don't even have a shared server program. Their entry level is a managed VPS or virtual private server. But what that means for you, if you sign up with Wired Tree, is that you are going to get much faster support. In fact, when I have a problem or an issue with the websites that I have hosted at Wired Tree, when I put in a ticket asking for help, the response is usually back within a minute or two. And so that is something that I really appreciate about Wired Tree. The downside for those of you that are just getting started in developing websites is that the buy-in is $49 a month. That is their entry level for their managed VPS service. So you need to ask yourself what's most important for you. Is the quick response, the faster support worth the extra money? Then you might want to go with Wired Tree. And so there you have it, my recommendations. After many years of shopping around and actually trying many different host providers, I have come to find these two to be the best, or at least for me, the best out there. And so I would recommend, if you're just kind of getting started, you're just testing the waters, that maybe it would be best to go with InMotion Hosting. And in fact, in our next tutorial, we'll actually sign up a new account at InMotion Hosting and go through the various steps of setting up a website using InMotion Hosting. And so if you're following along in our tutorials, I might recommend that you also go with InMotion Hosting. But for now, I believe that does it for what to look for in a good host provider.